Hello everyone in year 4. Welcome to your first lesson in social studies this week, and we continue with history and we continue learning about the history of crime and punishment. So if you remember last week we were talking about the Romans, their legacy, about the legal system, about what kind of crimes and punishments did they have, and what they basically left behind. What kind of legacy, what did they leave behind that we still keep, and the things that are no longer in place. This week we continue not with Romans, but with Anglo-Saxon Britain instead, and about the legal system. So let me just introduce you to everything and also explain who were the Anglo-Saxons. All right, so Anglo-Saxon laws and justice. The objective for this week is you will be able to find how the legal system worked in Anglo-Saxon Britain. What kind of success criteria do we have here? You will be able to tell some key facts about different types of punishments used in Anglo-Saxon Britain, and you'll be able to explain how Wergild was used in Anglo-Saxon Britain. Okay, guys, first we have a bit of a timeline. So please do remember AD that means Common Era, that's after year 0. So the Romans invaded Britain in AD 43, and they left Britain around the year 410. Okay, that was the end of the Roman rule in Britain. They actually left, and we begin the Anglo-Saxon period. So the key thing to remember here is that the Romans stopped ruling Britain around the year 400, and Anglo-Saxons come in and start ruling there. Okay, and the Anglo-Saxon period of Britain will last for 650 years, which is 250 years longer than the Roman rule. The Romans lasted for 400 years. Okay, so first of all, let's do a little bit of remembering. Let's use meta thinking and linking, trying to kind of remember what I learned and how can I answer these questions. So what were Roman laws known as? Please do try to remember the actual name of it. What types of Roman punishments can you remember? Can you remember any kinds of punishments? How did they punish people? And what would happen if you were a wealthy person that committed a crime compared to if you were a poor or slave? What did Roman law consider to be worst possible crime, and were the punishments fair? So I'd like you to think about these questions for a minute, yeah? And hopefully you can discuss them with your teacher or maybe your parent or your sibling. So guys, the Roman laws were known as the 12 tables, if you remember that. Types of punishments included execution, exile, amputation of limbs, payments, fines, and so on. If you were a wealthy person, of course, so for example, if you were a slave and you have no rights, or you were poor, you would probably be put to death for crimes, or you have to become a gladiator. But if you were actually a wealthy person, you just have to pay a certain amount of money and you will be sent into exile to live abroad and never return back. The worst crime possible was not following the emperor, not worshiping the emperor, not following the emperor's rules, rebelling against him. And the punishments were not fair, of course, because it's not fair that if you have money, your punishment will not be as severe. Of course, it was very unfair at that point in time. Okay, guys, question number 1, who were the Anglo-Saxons? So, Germanic tribes had been invading Britain for some time. So on the map, this is a bit of linking. Imagine where Germany is these days and where Britain lays. Okay, so they are very close to each other actually. So tribes that lived where today's Germany is had been invading Britain for some time, and without Roman protection, they proved to be a formidable force against the Brits. These invaders are also known to us as Anglo-Saxons because the two biggest invading tribes were the Angles and the Saxons. Other invaders were the Jutes, Franks, and Frisians, or Frisians, not sure. They came from the modern countries of Germany, Holland, and Denmark. So if you are really curious, you can look them up on a map to see where Britain is and where is Germany, Holland, and Denmark. So the justice system, okay, the system of crime and punishment. Many laws we have in Britain today are not that different from the laws of Anglo-Saxon Britain. However, the punishments were considerably different. There were no prisons to send criminals to, so punishments were designed to be a huge deterrent to those thinking of breaking the law, and they were often pretty brutal. Okay? The different Anglo-Saxon kings and kingdoms had their own laws and punishments. So it wasn't always the same in every single small kingdom in Anglo-Saxon Britain. They may have had different punishment systems. So the different villages and communities were divided into tithings made up of 10 men who were all responsible for each other's behavior. If a man in that tithing committed a crime, it was up to the other men to bring him to court. If they did not bring them to court, they would face punishment themselves. When a village wanted to find a criminal, the people would call upon everyone else in the community to find them. This was called a hue and cry. All right, so what kind of punishments did they have? So they would punish people by stoning, throwing stones at them, drowning, so throwing them in the sea and let them die, or the river. Branding, which is burning a hot iron rod onto someone's skin. Burning someone's skin with a hot rod. Paying a fine. If a person could not afford their fine, they could be put into slavery. Then we had whipping. Then we had stocks. If you remember, we had something similar called pillory in Roman Britain. Hanging, mutilation, so any part of your body could have been cut off, or exile, being sent away. Most punishments were carried out in public to make an example of the guilty person and to deter others from committing the same crime. All right, guys, so now task. You will have to answer these questions about the Anglo-Saxons, okay? Now, what kind of thinking we're going to be using? First of all, we're going to be using meta-thinking strategy planning. You will ask questions such as, how will I do this task? Have I done anything like this before? If yes, how? And was I successful? How can I make this successful? Then we will use analyzing, critical thinking. So we will be answering questions such as who, how, why, okay, and we'll be using the evidence from the text to answer these questions. That's your critical thinking, analyzing. All right. So guys, you have questions. Who were the Anglo-Saxons? How were the Anglo-Saxon punishments different to the modern punishments in Britain today? What were different villages and communities divided into during Anglo-Saxon Britain, and how did this work? What was hue and cry? And name at least 3 different kinds of punishments during Anglo-Saxon Britain, and explain why they were carried out in public. So guys, I need you to think about these because most probably there will be a quiz from this in the next lesson. So do make sure you really go through the text and try to get the answers, and then you look at the next answer key. Okay, so here you have it all as an answer key, but as I said, it is very important that you guys answer it before looking at the answer keys. You will find answer key, you will find everything here. Now guys, about a Wergild. A Wergild was a payment system used in Anglo-Saxon times to settle disputes between the criminal and the victim or the victim's family. So if there was a criminal and they committed a crime against someone, they would have to settle it. And there was a system called Wergild system for that. So wergild would be paid if someone was killed, and the amount depended on how important the victim was. So it's usually was in place or used when someone was killed. So if you can see here, if a free man is killed, 100 shillings wergild to be paid, 300 shillings for a rich nobleman, and only 20 for a slave. So it depended on how wealthy you were, um, how much money was actually paid for you. So if you were literally had no rights and were a slave, that was the least price they had to pay. But if you were actually someone very important and rich, you would have to pay loads of money if you killed someone rich. All right, then we also had the wergild system for body parts. Different parts of the body even had a wergild value. For example, if you lost a finger in a fight, your attacker would have to pay you compensation. So for broken tooth, it was 1 shilling, a broken nose, 10 shillings, lost finger, 6 shillings, lost thumb, 20 shillings, lost foot, 50 shillings, dislocated shoulder, 30 shillings, and if someone blinded you, if you blinded your opponent in a fight, you would have to pay them 50 shillings per eye, okay? Here we have a really nice picture of an Anglo-Saxon coin, how the coins and money looked during Anglo-Saxon Britain. All right, the trials. In Anglo-Saxon Britain, people accused of crimes had to go to court and be tried for their crimes, just like the court in Britain today. Okay, so you are brought into court and you stand a trial. A jury, which was a group of people, would decide if the defendant, person accused of crime, was innocent or guilty and decide on a suitable punishment. The defendant could choose oath keepers who would swear they were innocent. Okay, so oath keepers were kind of witnesses. So for example, if someone witnessed that you did not commit the crime, someone can come, or maybe two people saw what happened, they will come to, you can choose these people to be your oath keepers, and they can swear in front of the jury that they saw what happened and you did not commit this crime. If the defendant insisted they were innocent, and honestly the jury or the judge could not reach a decision whether they were guilty or not, there would be a trial by ordeal, through which the Anglo-Saxons believed God would decide if the person was guilty or not. The defendant could choose which ordeal to go through. So guys, if you look at the ordeals, yeah, there were three main ones: cold water ordeal, hot water ordeal, and iron bar ordeal. So the cold water ordeal, the person would have their hands and feet tied with a rope, be given a drink of holy water, and then thrown into an icy cold lake. If they sank to the bottom, they were innocent. If they floated, they were guilty. Now, this is a bit of linking with science. What do you think? Did people float or sink? So if you actually think about it, do we generally float or sink in the water? Then the hot water ordeal, the person would have to plunge their hand into a pot of boiling hot water and retrieve a stone from the bottom. The hand would be bandaged for 3 days because it would be burnt, and then checked. If it was healing without infection, the person was deemed innocent, but if it was infected, they were guilty. And then we have something similar with the iron bar ordeal. The person would have to carry a glowing hot iron bar for 9 feet. They would then have their hands bandaged for 3 days. Like the hot water ordeal, if it was healing without infection, the person was deemed innocent, but if it was infected, they were guilty. Okay. All right, now guys, again, you have a couple of questions. Again, we'll be using the same ACPs. We're going to be using meta thinking, strategy planning. How am I going to do this? But by now you should pretty much know very well how to do this. And analyzing, critical thinking, answering these questions using the evidence from the text, okay? And you have an answer key as well. It is very important that you just do not skip straight to the answer key, because we will quiz you in this and see how well you remember it. You won't remember anything just looking by looking at the answer key. All right, guys, and at the end, meta thinking, self-reflection. How did I learn today? What did I learn? And was I successful If you can fill this in, use the traffic lights color code. All right, that's all from me. See you in lesson 2. Hope you enjoyed this.